Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Paint with Sean. So, today we are going to work on a stormy, cloudy, very vibrant color sunset. So, it's going to be very dark and light contrast today. We're going to really focus on the structure of the sky and the clouds, adding a little bit of depth with a real light point in the middle, a far off set of mountains overlooking some water. So this is going to give us an opportunity to work on reflections. And then it will come all the way forward to a beach and kind of finish the scene for us. So it's going to be real dark, but it's still going to have a lot of real light colors in there. So the contrast is going to be fantastic. We've got a limited color palette: black, a little bit of brown, a bunch of blue, red, yellow, and white. So no green today. When nature's lights turn off, it really changes the way that we see things, and we start to see various versions of color that aren't realistic like they are in the daytime. So very exciting today. So we're going to jump right in, and we're going to have a big portion of this. So I've got a straight dry canvas. I did not put anything on this because a lot of this is just going to go straight to black. So typically I coat these with a white gesso to give it something lighter to indicate distance. The lighter the color is, the farther away it tends to look, where darker colors tend to get closer. But when it comes time to make a stormy looking scene, I don't want that white. I want it to be very dark. So we're going to start out with a bunch of black. Okay, so this is a whole lot of black, and I'm just going to kind of put that in the middle. And then I'm going to get a bunch of this blue. So I really want a dark blue color. I really don't want this to be pure black. So we want to pull some of the hues from the blue into this blackening. And it's very easy to darken the color. You just put a little bit of black, and boy, it goes right to dark very quickly. So we're gonna blend this in all over through the sky. So a very dark color in here, and we can add a little bit of white as we come back into this. So we're gonna have a big portion of this in this really dark color on the corners. Okay. So I'm just using this big giant 1.5 inch brush. You can use a 2-inch brush or whatever you got. Okay, and I really just want to put in some of this darker color. And again, it looks very black in the sense of the camera, but we're going to continue to just add more blue to this same color, and this will automatically lighten it. So I'm not lightening this with straight white. I'm just adding a lighter blue color. So because that color is already lighter, it's going to come up quite a bit lighter on the canvas. Okay, so you can immediately see the hue change right there in the middle. Okay, and I'm just going to sort of blend some of this in. And on these areas where we're connecting, we just want to kind of blend these in and really make this soft. Okay, kind of take out some of those dark cloud colors. All right, I'm going to put a little lighter color over here. And again, this doesn't show up very drastically on camera until we start putting some big changes in here. So I'm just getting sort of a background of the colors here. And we'll get a little bit more of this blue color and throw it in our pile here. And again, as I'm using up this darker color paint, every time I add a blue, it's a drastically lighter color. Okay, so we can immediately see some difference there. Okay, and we're just putting in some base here, and we'll probably cover up some of this and just even it out a little bit. Okay, so nice and lighter. You can actually scrape the paint right off the thing. So we got a little bit lighter of a color going on in here. I'm going to do one more round of light at the top because I really want this center to be the light point, because we're going to have a real bright sunset looking situation going on. So just throwing a little bit more light color on there and sort of blend it out. Okay, so it's okay to leave that little bit of lighter color in there because that's kind of what we're looking for. We want to have that to really stand out compared to the dark over here. Okay, it's okay to have a little bit of variation in the colors too. Okay, so I'm going to just come all the way across this, blend it out a little bit, soften things up. So you can see we're starting with a real dark situation going on. Okay, so I just want to throw a little bit more over here and just kind of lighten things up a little bit. And this is your world, guys. You can adjust this to have the lights and the darks wherever you want them, but this gives us a real good starting point. Okay, so now I've got that set up. I probably came farther down the page than I really needed to with the sky color. We're going to start some clouds, you know, the bottoms of them being shown down here where it's the light reflecting up, bouncing off those cloud edges. And that's the only parts of the clouds you're really going to see much. So we may throw a little bit of lighter situations in on top just to highlight them as well, but I really want to keep this fairly dark so we can really initiate the sense of a storm going on. So just getting this brush nice and rinsed out here. Okay, so let's use a different brush here, and we're going to go into a little bit of red and yellow. So we want to make a very bright orange, a little more to the reddish side. So let's see. Let's try our little fan brush, see how that does. So I'm going to get this just a little bit of wet so it'll kind of thin the color out a little bit. So we've got wet color on here. If we want to blend things together, it's okay to have the same consistency and thickness of the paint, but when it comes time to put it over the top where we want to have sort of some distinction, having a thinner paint, adding a little water to your brush before you mix the colors will actually thin out the paint and it will stick better to a thick paint. So I just use various parts of my tray to sort of mix the colors, and so I'm just sort of looking at my little model here and seeing what tones we want to have in this orangey color. Okay, because we want this to be a really just opposite contrast. All right, so the brightest color is always going to be in the middle, and as we have this dark on here, it's going to start to lighten that color. So we always want to start with right after you load your brush. That's the freshest color, and then it's going to darken from there. Okay, so we really want to make some cloud structures, and we're just sort of making the edges of these. Okay, and I don't want to go too far with this because, again, you can see almost automatically it starts to get real dark. Okay, so I'm going to actually get a little more paint and mix this up over here so I've got a little more supply to work with. And again, the color doesn't have to be exact. I do want it to stay more to the red side, more than the yellow. I don't want this to get too bright because we're gonna have a real bunch of yellow area within this. So we want to make sure that we're really getting a real light color in here. Okay, so make sure you're using enough paint, and I'm just kind of putting in some areas that will indicate the edges of the clouds. Okay, and as you get that brush dirty, you're also going to go back with a little bit of that other color on there, so be aware of that. Okay, and so I don't want to make too much clouds here. We're just going to put a little bit on here and sort of let these come off into nothing over here. Okay, and I'll let that relax a little bit. We'll add a little bit more here. Okay, so if you turn this upside down, you can see it sort of makes the shape of an underneath of a cloud. And that's really what we're looking for here is just some form. Okay, so we just really want a little bit in this picture to indicate where the edges of those clouds might be. Okay, so maybe there's some up here. Got a little bit going on. Okay, we're going to make these real bright colors here. So I'm going to add a little bit more of this yellow And come back to this center area, sort of lighten this up just a tad. And the ones that I'm looking at are very, very distinct in how they separate these lights and darks. Okay, so we're just going to get a little bit going on in here. A little bit of indications here and there. We don't want too much. Okay, so we've got a little bit on the board. So now I'm going to take a dry brush, and I like this little corner one because I can get right to the edge, and I'm just going to dab this a little bit. So I want to sort of keep this bottom edge as it is, okay, but I want to sort of feather this up a little bit. So it's not that solid color coming off of the edge. So just a little bit of paint distribution there, feather it up just a little bit. Really want to leave that bottom edge there. It's very important. So we're just sort of feathering this and blending it a little bit from the bottom there. Okay, so we just want to indicate some clouds. Alright, so we've got a little edges to work with here. We want to continue to sort of play with this in layers. Alright, so a lot of times depth comes from layer over layer, but trying to paint directly on it and just keep going, it tends to really not work the best all the time. So I'm going to get just a little bit of water here, loosen up this paint just a little bit so it's not quite so thick, and then I'm going to come back in with a little bit of extra layers. Okay, so we'll just add a little bit more touch to this. Okay, and I'm just sort of blending this so that these bottom edges are very distinct, but the other ones are kind of blend off into nothing. Okay, and you can use circulars, you can use straight up. Okay, so I'm just adding a little bit more color in here, making sure these edges are very distinct for us. More paint on my brush. It's getting up there a little ways. So again, I want to keep this little feathered edge on the bottom very distinct. Okay, so you don't want this to be perfectly round. Clouds are not perfectly round. The edges are not perfectly flat. Okay, so I'm just continuing to add a little bit of indications of some colors. And let me see, I might get a smaller brush. So this one's got a little bit smaller tips on it. I don't know, that one's a little stiff. Let's see if I can get a softer one. That one's a little crispy too. So you want to make sure you get all the water and paint out of your brushes as soon as you get done using them. So I'm just going to blend this with a little bit softer brush so that these can have a little bit less lines going on. There we go. Alright, because we just want the indication of some clouds. We don't really want them to stand out too much in this dark sky. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so we'll get some of this just blended up. Okay, real light touch here, guys. This is one of those where you just want to test your relax a little bit. So we're definitely working on these clouds and enjoying it and kind of creating these undertone colors. Okay, so again, I really want to try and leave some of these edges here and just blend them up but not touch the bottom. Okay, and the overlaps of these little layers is what will create our depth. So we're going to work on this a little bit today, guys. Got a few more minutes left, and again, we're just starting to get the indication of some things. These dark colored skies, you really don't want too much of that bright color in there, but you really do want to have some nice edges where you can see the start of those things. Okay, and we got this one going on, and this one's sort of coming up here a little more. I'm gonna wrap this one around, sort of give it a little thing going on. So I'm going to continue to add color onto this and sort of layer it in. Okay, and the closer it is to that edge, the more I want that color to be distinct. Alright, and I'm just kind of fading this out to nothing here, and on the bottom again we want to have a little more color as well. And again, guys, the farther stuff is from you, the less distinct it's going to be. Okay, so I'm going to throw a little more yellow into this and brighten it up right here in the middle. Yeah, that's what we want, like that. There we go. Okay, so it's a very consistent thing. So that's kind of part of some of the fun with this, is how random can you make it look, because if it's the same everywhere, it tends to look a little too man-made. All right, so we're just going to blend some of this up just a tad. That's a real light color there, like that. All right, you can blend this to your heart's content. All right, so we really just want to indicate the clouds. We don't really want this to be too distinct here. Okay, so I'm going to get some of this off my brush. Blend this a little bit more up here into the dark. And that dark colors really like to stand out against these light colors. So I really want to just feather out that top little layer. And a lot of times you can move the color around just slightly depending on how you want that to look. Okay, so I've got some real bright spots going on and some real dark ones. And okay, so we're just going to sort of fade this out, and we're going to keep working on the colors. So I really like to sometimes just play with this. You know, if you guys have ever watched Bob Ross, he's so good at this that he just hurries and gets through it almost. And sometimes it doesn't allow you to kind of play with it and enjoy it as much. That guy was always on such a hard deadline. You know, he really had to get it done in 30 minutes kind of thing. And I don't like that sort of pressure on myself. Okay, so a lot of times I just take my time and feel it out. How do I feel about a position? It doesn't always have to be the right way the first time you touch the canvas. There may be some adjustments you need to make. Okay, and you may paint over some stuff that you already did and you want to fix it, or you want to add things that weren't already there. Okay, so you'll learn how to play with it yourself and get it to a place where you are comfortable with it. And that's what it really comes down to with painting is, are you enjoying it? Are you having a good time? Is it something that you're looking forward to doing? Because if you really don't enjoy the process, it's very easy to get lost in the judgment. Oh, how good is it? How do I think this should have looked instead of how it looks or whatever. So it's very easy to get down on yourself if all you're trying to do is, oh, I wasted all this time, or I already did this good and then I messed it up, or whatever it comes out to be. So again, I just want to throw in a couple of indicators here. And we're just adding some colors and playing with our little shapes and forms of clouds. So again, you guys can do this to however extent you want and really just make it a process that you enjoy, okay? Because that's kind of the thing. Really just enjoying the time. Gosh, I sound redundant, but like, that's why I started painting. I really just wanted to relax a little bit more, you know? I'm very good at staying busy, but sometimes life doesn't need you to be busy. It needs you to just slow down and enjoy it a little bit. Okay, so I'm just even dabbing a little bit here to thin this out. Okay, really just let it indicate where it needs to be. And down here where it's drying out a little bit and I need some more paint. Okay, I just want the little indicators of these cloud lines. Sort of like waves in the sky almost. Okay, so we're getting some good color on here. Again, I'm just going to continue to add some layers of a little bit lighter and a little bit darker versions of orange. And then we can really get into some of the lower end stuff as we move forward here. So I really do like some of these highlight pieces to really stand out. Like that. There we go. And then just sort of blending it up. Clouds don't have a lot of hard lines usually. They're usually very soft and kind of fluffy. So we don't want them to look like cotton balls. We really want them to look like natural entities. Okay. With these bottom pieces, really I want that solid color to be there. And I don't want to go too far up the page, so I'm really kind of limiting the cloud shapes within this here. Okay, but these overlaps of dark and light, guys, that's really where the difference makers end up. That's where you're going to be able to really see, oh, here's a layer, I guess, is what it really comes down to. Something that's over the top of another thing. Typically, there's a dark and a light that allows it to stand out like that. Alright, and again, I really want these bottom edges to be solid, so I'll just add a little more paint and fluff it up as we go. We're doing good. And I want to keep this top edge darker than everything else. Okay, so we really want this to fade back into darkness. Again, I'm just going to get a little bit of this extra paint off my brush. Come over here and dry this out a little bit. So we're getting some indications of some clouds. I still want to continue to work on them a little bit, which also will help as this darker color underneath sort of dries out and has less black that is blending with it, because that really does change the color itself. So if there's already a color on there that's a darker or a lighter hue than what you're working with, it immediately changes. Okay, so we're just about out of time for today, but I appreciate you hanging out with me, and we're going to continue to work in the clouds and put a little indication of some bright points in here and make this a nice stormy watery scene. So I'm going to continue to work on the clouds. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me a little bit, and we will catch you in the next episode.